Hi, how's it going?
Hi, good. How are you?
Good. Are you going to the GraphQL conference next week?
Nah,
No.
a bit far from me for me,
Yeah,
from France.
you're in France, right?
Yeah, but yeah, looks uh, looks like it's going to be a good event.
Yeah,
Yep. You will go there, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for this meeting, we have agenda files in the repo, like for the main
Mhm.
meetings. Um, so I think we want everyone to add themselves.
Oh, sorry, I didn't do that.
Yeah, we just
Uh,
started doing that.
let me see. Yeah, you sent a link on the Discord, right?
I just
Oh
put it
no.
in the Zoom chat.
Oh, okay, okay. Thank you.
Just looking at the issue, Robert. I don't. I'm not sure that I follow. I'm not familiar with the algorithm that Yakov's using, but in the algorithm that I would use, that would just evaporate. Like the defer would just not be relevant anymore.
Yeah, I'll talk through it. Yeah, so let's get started. Um, I just mentioned if to Benoit, if you haven't already put yourself on the agenda, I put the link in the Zoom chat. Um, by being here, you agree to the membership agreement, participation and contribution guidelines, and code of conduct. Um, and the only topic that I wanted that I had on the agenda right now is this um this query that I put in the Discord. I'll share my screen. 1 second. Yeah, so in collect fields in the spec right now, we have a set of visited fragments that when we are going through collect fields here, if you encounter a named fragment spread, we traverse into the selection set of that named fragment spread and add that fragment to the set of named fragments, the set of visited fragments. Then if you encounter any other named fragment spread, we always check, is that named fragment spread inside the set? And if so, it gets skipped. So in this case, I think that it would work pretty nicely where this defer just gets ignored because we have already traversed the named fragment. Um, but what could happen is, what if it's like this? Now you see the defer first, and because if your implementation does go and add fragments would defer into that visited fragment set, then you wouldn't see the one that doesn't have the defer. So I think either we could just say that if a fragment spread does have defer, we don't add it to that set. and it'll get traversed again, and then we can the selection set will get processed as both having defer and not defer, and later on the algorithm would not defer them because that's what we do when there's a mixture of both. But
this is I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding here, Rob. There's
Okay.
The visited fragments is immutable. So when you add something to visited fragments, you're only doing that as you recurse through there. Once you're back out of the fragment, so like when you're then looking at the next fragment, visited fragments doesn't include that anymore.
Interesting. That's what the spec does.
Yes, because everything in the spec is immutable. And this is one of the big issues with a mutable algorithm, is it opens the door for problems like this, that if you stick with an immutable pattern, just can't occur.
So in the spec, you would, it's not what GraphQL JS is doing. GraphQL JS has one set that it passes around and mutates as you iterate through.
But
So-
the regular GraphQL JS, not the one that's modified for stream and defer. Because that would just fall down immediately. If you, for example, had me and friend, and both of them browsed the. Let me write a quick query into the chat that wouldn't work if that was true. Oh, Zoom's changed its chat.
yeah, so in like the latest released version,
So we're creating a new visited fragment.
okay, but this set is only for the same level. Like, right. Once you like go into, because first you're going to execute the fields under me, that does like collect fields there with the visited fragment name set. Then that gets returned. Then once you start executing best friend, and then you go into that selection set, that's a whole new set. Right.
Okay, I'm reasonably confident that if you see the same fragment, it's possible that GraphQL JS has, as an optimization, done it at one level of a selection set because it knows that there's no. No, I'm pretty sure it can't, because here's another example where it would be wrong. Well, I suppose I was going to say skip and include, but actually those would never be added to the visited fragments anyway, because they've not been visited, because the
that's
thing said not to.
evaluated first, and then it's added to visited fragment names after that.
Yeah, okay. Let me actually load the spec. This is a thing where if it is written in that way, we would have to change it for stream and defer so that we didn't get this issue. So no, you were right. It does it on a selection set basis. So it won't visit the same selection set more than once. and the skip and include are handled themselves before we then consider adding things to the visited fragments. But that would have to change with stream and defer, in my opinion, because effectively, if the fragment has a defer or something like that, you would still need to browse through any fragment that didn't, as you've demonstrated here.
Right.
I'm surprised that this is implemented the way it is, but I guess it's marginally more efficient, so that does make sense.
So, this does like protect you.
Sorry, just to interrupt again. This is an issue in GraphQL in general for where fragments have directives on them.
Right. I mean, other than skip and include,
which we've given
fragment
special
comes-
handing for, yeah.
whichever fragment comes first, like if the directives like affect the execution in any way. But there isn't really, I mean, there isn't a way to have directives affect execution unless you change the execution algorithm, right? I guess you could be looking at it inside your resolver.
I mean, custom directives do arbitrary stuff, right? It's not defined in the spec what they do. It's kind of the point of having them is so that you can have it do something experimental, much like how Relay do all their different null handling using them. That is like effectively a different style of execution. But it's client-side execution rather than server-side.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is if you have a directive that does affect execution, you necessarily have to have a place to change the execution. And having this, like, you would have to like not put it in the visited fragments wherever your execution, right? Or
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that actually this is a broader problem than just for defer. And actually what we want is a validation rule that says that other than skip and include, all of the directives on named fragment spreads at the same position in the document must be the same.
yeah, I'm not putting the way I'm thinking about this into words, and I'm not communicating this well right now. But I'm thinking that like, you don't have to follow these rules exactly as long as you have the same result. If you have like custom directives that are changing the way that you execute, then I think that you necessarily would not be following the execution rules exactly. And you would have to like have your execution handle it any way that you want to. And if we added a rule that for any directive, you can't have the same directive on the same fragment spread, different directives on the same fragment spread, that could make someone that did change how the execution works have their query not work anymore if they add that validation.
Yeah, we'd effectively have to add two classes because I don't like special casing if and include, which is what we're doing currently. So really there's, just like we had repeatable directives where that was a keyword that we added later when we realized we needed it.
Mm-hmm.
This feels like a directive on fragment that is allowed to differ versus one that isn't. Then again, I mean, differing in this regard, if you step back and ignore the spec for a moment and you look at the query that you've written, it seems fairly obvious what that should do, right? It should not defer anything. So the first one, you as a human looking at it would say, yeah, well, I've deferred it, but I've also not deferred it, so I'll just get it straight away and the defer will go away. That's the desired behavior. And really the spec should give us a way for that behavior to happen, I think.
What about if it's like this?
So that works under my proposal. It just means that when you get the payloads through, you would get labels being the two labels foo and bar, right? But if you also had,
you get pendings and completed for both of them.
Yeah, I think you actually only get one pending for both labels. So both labels go into the same pending, but I can't remember offhand. It's been a while since I've looked over those texts.
Yeah, and I think that's also what yeah, I mean we did say that there is only one label in a pending, so you should have two of them.
Okay.
And that's what and I think that for this case what ends up happening in Yakov's implementation is that the nothing is deferred, but you do get a pending and completed with this for this label. I thought that was a little bit strange, so that's why I brought this up. And
yeah, it is. You're right. Strange.
But it feels like that makes logical sense if you're going to get two pendings and completed for this case. So that's kind of why I was thinking to just avoid this entirely and make this a validation error. Because that's already what we have. We already have a validation rule for stream where you can't have a combination of different streams or stream and not stream on the same field.
So there's a simple but expensive fix to this problem, which is in the collect fields algorithm to effectively initialize the visited fragments just inside of step 3. So rather than doing it in step 1 as we do currently, and you'd need to effectively have like an incoming visited fragments, and then just inside step 3, you'd create a new visited fragments that copied everything from the visited fragments. And then the problem would go away, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it would work how I thought it did when I first read over the issue. The issue with that is it's less efficient, right? It means for every single selection, we're having to recreate this set, which is, not a cheap, not a free operation. But that would solve it. Then you just browse over the selection sets multiple times, which already works for overlapping selection sets. If those two fragments had different names, you'd already lap over them twice anyway. So it doesn't seem like a disaster.
Yeah, but I mean, we could always change it later if we have the validation rule. Like if this is a problem, people really want to have this or they want to have this, and that's causing issues for them, then we can like look into the right way to change collect fields and remove and loosening the validation.
I think I want to say I think we definitely need the ability to both defer and not defer a fragment, because that's not generally going to happen in this kind of situation. It's going to happen in like deep down in a component tree where, one branch has deferred the avatar and in a completely different branch, it hasn't deferred the avatar. And I think, especially in relay projects, you're going to see that come up.
Right, I get it, because it's not. Because maybe it's this, and then these both converge somewhere deeper down where they're spreading a fragment that then Yeah, I see. Would that same issue happen with stream though?
All of the directives on a field have to match. I think that's already a validation rule, isn't it? Maybe not, because again,
I
it
don't think
wouldn't
so.
be true with skip and include.
I had
I've-
added a special case to the overlapping fields can merge rule specifically for stream.
Right, yeah. We don't really care about directives, it seems.
Yeah.
Other than the built-in ones. Fair enough.
And I know that's something that comes up with Relay because they don't care about directives either when they normalize data into the store. So like schemas that use directives, you know, like an uppercase directive on a string that causes problems with the Relay store.
Yeah. Hmm.
So in your example where I can see this being a problem is that some post is a shared component that's used in multiple queries and in this query it doesn't need, like, this query requires the same data but it's not deferred here.
Yeah, I think so. And effectively, that selection set would be a merged selection set, but it would have both of those fragment spreads in. It'd be effectively ID, avatar, defer, title, and then avatar again.
I mean, I think the easy way to do that, and it's what Yakov already did, was if the fragment spread has a defer fragment, you don't add it to visited fragment names.
I think I would address it a little bit like how I said before, but we only actually need to do it when there is a fragment spread. So effectively, before you recurse into the fragment, you would first check to see if it's already been visited, and if it has, then ignore it. Then you would create a new visited fragments that contains your own name, and then do the recursion there. That way, only when you're navigating through a named fragment, then it wouldn't be for every selection, it'd only be for fragments. Yeah. I think we need that anyway. I think we have to have that anyway, because otherwise things like if you put live on a fragment, for example, it will matter which order you do it in, whether or not anything even sees it, I guess. Though I guess if you write in a server that has live, you'd have a custom execute, like you said before.
Yeah.
It's challenging. Yeah, it's challenging. If you have Right. So you asked about stream. If you have stream, and you have a field that is both streamed and not streamed, in completely different document paths, but that result in the same response paths, then what will happen is it will just go into the collected fields. So you'll end up with all of those different fields that are the streamed field, well, the array field, in both its streamed and non-streamed forms. So I don't think that causes any issues. It's because fragments are kind of ethereal. I think that's really the issue.
For stream,
So I don't think.
I mean, we could fix this for stream.
I don't think stream's going to be an issue.
What we did right now for stream and what like we've had for the past few years was that we have the validation rule that you can't have different streams, and then the execution just looks at the first node to decide like what the initial count is, and after the fields are collected, we just look at the first one and be like, does it have stream? Are the fields collected? Well, does it have stream? What's the initial count? It could be more complex and look at all of them and figure out like what's the minimum number of things that need to be in the initial payload. But for simplicity, we didn't do that. Again, thinking that if I think we got feedback from Facebook that was what they were doing, and it wasn't really a problem for anyone. So we figured that if it was a problem, we could do something smarter in the future.
Thinking more about this and applying it to some of the other specs that we've got coming up, there's Matt Mahoney's fragment variables spec, and that again will need this behavior to be different because it will be a fragment spread, but it will be a fragment spread with parameters. So the fact that you visited it with one set of parameters shouldn't mean that you visited it with another. I think what I'll do, Rob, is I'm going to propose a change to the spec where we literally change the collect fields algorithm, and we push it down and we say this is to make space for stream defer, it's to make space for the fragment variables, and for various other situations.
That's creating a new set in step 3.
I don't think it will be in step 3. It will be just before step D part IX. Oh yeah, it'll be just before DII. Effectively, we'll create another copy of visited fragments and then add ourselves to that copy, and we'll do the same thing in E as well.
And then, so you're only preventing loops. Do I understand it right? You're only preventing loops, but you're not. So even this query, then you would go into
You'd
collect
walk
fields
name
twice.
fragment twice. There's a few other, more complicated ones that we would also make you walk twice in this way as well, it seems.
Is that bad?
No, that's not true. That's not true. I think because everything's effectively immutable, you're passing in the visited fragments, but I think you pass by value effectively in the spec. I'll have to read up on it and think about it a bit more. Is it bad? It is marginally inefficient in a way that engines can optimize, but with the caveat that they need to be aware that the reason for doing this was to make it so that when we do, for example, the variable fragments, fragments with variables or parameters, that everything works as you would expect. In the case that the fragment had variables, we would have to walk it twice, right?
I wonder, did Matt have a pull request to implement the?
He's raised an RFC at least. I think the syntax is figured out, but I'm not sure that he got as far as execution, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, so it looks like he wrote something that,
Like he keyed them based on the arguments. Yeah, that's not unexpected because that's a very relay approach to doing it, right?
yeah.
That's effectively what they do in their stores as well, keys. I think it would be better to walk it twice than to do it with the keys approach. Just immediately, I think, how would you break this? Well, you'd feed in like a base 64 encoded avatar image as one of your variables. And all of a sudden your key is now that.
Yeah.
I'll talk to Matt about it. Can you drop a link to this into the incremental delivery chat?
Yep.
Cheers.
But I'm still worried that like doing the global change that makes everything less efficient for something that we need. We could have a case where we're only doing it for defer. And this other stuff that's coming up, but we can handle each one on its own, you know?
I think
Versus
the
like
efficiency difference is minimal. Might be wrong though. I'll read through GraphQL.js's implementation and compare it and see what's going to happen. But I think unless you've got pathological queries, it's not going to be too bad.
okay. I'm so the version of collect fields that's on the main branch of GraphQL is, I think it's like pretty significantly different than what's in the spec, because it's Yakov's defer stream implementation. I'm
I'll probably
thinking
just
about,
go
like,
back to a version 16 and review that.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I'm working on now, like seeing if there's I kind of want collect fields to look a lot more like it does now than what's on main. So trying to see like what the implementation would look like if we change that. So that's what I've been working on, because I think it will be easier to specify.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. I'm not going to be about next Monday because, of course, I'll be probably adjusting to time in San Francisco. But are you both making it to GraphQL Conf?
I won't.
I'm going to be getting there on Tuesday. So I'll probably be at the conference towards the end of the day on Tuesday. Yeah, I'll see you there.
All right. I'll see you there, Robin. Sorry you can't make it, Benoit.
That's all right. Have a good conference.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.